Okay, guys, so our next lesson has to do with making choices of how to basically get credit. So forms of credit include, they could be bank loans, they could be something called a line of credit, credit cards, payday loans, dealerships or stores offer financing. So many factors determine which credit option is best, such as the interest charged, the total payment, the amount of each payment, and the length of time it takes off to pay the loan. So when you make a decision to borrow money, there's lots of things to take into consideration. So just some kind of words, keywords here. The Bank of Canada prime rate is a value set by Canada's central bank, which other financial institutions use to set their interest rate. So there's always like this base rate, and then banks go on top of that base rate for interest rates. A line of credit is a new type of way to get a loan. So it's a pre-approved loan that offers immediate access to funds up to an agreed upon amount, and it has a minimum monthly payment. So how line of credits basically work is when you have your bank accounts, if any of you guys have bank accounts and you have like a checking or a savings account, so it's an extra account that has money in it that you've borrowed from the bank, but you don't get charged any interest unless you take money out of it. So it can sit there and not be charging you interest. And as soon as you take, like you transfer and you take money out of it, it starts to charge you interest. And then a secured line of credit has a lowered interest rate. It's tied into your asset, so it could be like your house, tied into your house. Some people do that so that they can get that lower interest rate. So part of the lesson today is learning some new functions on your solver. So in the next slide, I'm just going to show you how to find these functions and then how to use them. So we're going to start using them to see, they're kind of like little quick, like they're almost like little cheats because they help you to calculate without doing some of the times, you know, how many years, times how many months, all those kind of extra steps. So there's 3 that we use in this course. Number 9, which is the balance one. So for the balance one, it tells you how much of the loan you still have to pay off, and you put in how many payments you've made already. So how you would calculate it is you have the BAL, there's a bracket, you type in how many payments have been made, and then you close the bracket. For the next one, the PRN stands for principal. So it calculates the sum of the principal during a specified period of time. So how much principal has been paid off. So remember, principal, when you have a loan, principal is how much you then own of it. So once you pay something off completely, then the whole thing would be principal. And if you went to sell it, you'd get that money back. If you still owe all the money and you go to sell something, you have to just pay back that money. You don't actually own anything. And then the last one's a really good one. It calculates how much interest you've paid during a specified period of time. So you would put a bracket, you start at payment 1, you put a comma, then how many payments have been made, and then you close that bracket and it'll tell you how much in total. So just on the next slide, I'm going to show you how to access those in your calculator. Okay, so example 1, Ed and Mary currently have a 5-year mortgage for $150,000, 4.7% interest, amortized over 25 years. So remember, with mortgages, amortized means how long the loan is for. So after 5 years, they need to negotiate their mortgage to pay, or pay it off. And then just remember, if it doesn't say compounding, how often for mortgages, it's always twice a year, semi-annually. So first of all, how much are the monthly mortgage payments? So we're trying to figure out what the payment would be. Oops, let me get my pen. Like that color. Okay, so we're looking at monthly payments. So the PY would be 12. The interest rate is 4.7. So the present value, they've borrowed $150,000. The future value is 0. They're trying to pay off this loan. CY we said was 2 for mortgage payments. And then for N, it's going to be 25 years times the PY, which is 12. So that's just to figure out the initial, what the payment would be. So let's plug that into your solver. Okay, so their payment ends up being $846, and we would round to 2 decimal places for money, so this would be 97 cents. So that's their monthly payment. Okay, so all that's saved in your solver now, so you need to be able to have that in your solver to do the new key function. So you have to have put everything in for the question already. So question number, or part B says, after 5 years, how much have they paid? So how much have they paid for their loan already? So we're doing these 846 payments, $846 payments, 12 times a year for 5 years. We can just go out of the solver and calculate that. So how much have they actually put in of their own money? So 846.97 times 12 times 5, because it's only 5 years later. So it looks like they've put in $50,818.20. So next part is asking how much do they still owe after this time. So a couple of different ways that you can do this. And then we're gonna try the new key functions for D and E. So we're gonna keep using the solver for this one. So we're looking for, after this period of time, after these 5 years, how much they still owe. So what would still be left on the future value of their loan. So that's what we're going to solve for. And then I can show you how you can use the balance key to do it this way as well. So basically the idea is the loan is at a 4.7% interest. The PV was 150,000. We now know, I'm not using my pen, so I'm having a hard time squeezing this in, so I'm just going to put it over here. But that goes in for your payment, right? Your payment is $846.97. We're looking at after 5 years. So my PY is monthly payments. My CY is compounding twice a year. So instead of the 25 for the N, it's only 5 years later, so I'm putting the 5 in times the 12 payments each year. So that the N would become 60. So if you change your solver for this one, so go in and retype this. And I forgot to mention, don't forget to put your payment in as negative, right? You're giving away that money. So the 150 you borrowed, so that's positive, but the 846 needs to be negative, or else it's not going to go against the loan. Okay, so for my FV, when I calculate this, I end up still owing. So it would be negative because that's the money you eventually have to keep paying back. So it's 132,126.78. So after 5 years, I still owe that amount. You might say, well, that looks wrong. How come if I've paid $50,000 already, how come my loan didn't go down to like almost $100,000? So what you have to remember is if you have a loan, every, like depending on how often your interest is compounding, that interest is being calculated all the time. So even though you paid off $50,000 of that loan, you don't see that 50 come straight off because every day basically there's interest accumulating, and then that's why it doesn't match exactly. Okay, so just showing you how this kind of can work with the balance key. If you want to try that one, so we want to know how much they still owe, so that'd be like the balance of the loan. So that's the BAL one. And so in your key there, that would be something you'd add to your study sheet, because for balance, you just have to type in how many payments have happened. You don't have to do the 1 comma and then the second number. So there's 60 payments that happen in those 5 years. So remember to go back to your regular window, like do second quit to get in your regular window. Then go into your apps, finance, and instead of clicking the TMV solver, you want to go down to the BAL. You click it, you type in the 60, close your bracket, and then press enter. So So when I did it, I got 132, 126.78. So it matched exactly. Sometimes it's a tiny bit off just for rounding, but it matched exactly. So just keep in mind, if you had a question where it said, how much do you still owe? There's two options now. You can do this whole method, which is create a whole new solver window, or your work would be literally putting the BAL, comma, 60, comma, or brackets, sorry, not comma, and then you just write what the answer is. So that counts as your work and applied. If it would be 2-mark question and 1 mark was for work, if you had written this instead of all this, you would get that full mark for work, right? The whole idea is that technology is assisting you with the question. Okay, let's try the next one. How much total principal have they paid? So that's how much of the actual loan they've paid down. So clear that out. Go back to the apps under finance. For the principal one, it's the PRN. So first it's got the summation. So that kind of weird looking E means it's a summation notation in math. It means it's adding up a whole bunch of things for you. So it's basically adding up how much of the payments that have actually gone down to paying off the loan. So with this one, remember you need 2 parts or it won't work. You need the 1, you need the comma, and then you need the end. So we wanted to do 60, see what the loan's like 5 years later. So that would be 60 payments later. So you would write it like that. I'm going to go down and pick that one. So it's a 1 starting at like day 1 or payment 1, comma to payment 60. I get the 60 from the 5 years of payment for 12 years because this question is all about the 5 years. Close my bracket and press enter. So I get a negative number, meaning that I've given that money to the bank. So it looks like I've paid off $17,873.22. So thinking about like what's another way I could calculate this? Well, you could take what your loan is initially, so the $150,000, and you could subtract off how much you still owe, and then that would show you how much you've actually paid down of the loan. So there actually ends up being a bunch of ways you can answer questions in the end, and you can just pick whichever the method works for you. Okay, and the last one, how much interest have you paid in this time period? So once again, you could have taken how much you paid, so this number here, that's how much money you paid out of pocket, how much you've actually paid down of your loan. The difference between those two would be your interest. Or you can use this new key function for interest. So it's once again got the summation button, meaning it's adding up a total of things. This one is, if you go under finance, it is the number or the letter A. It's an INT. Once again, for this one, you need to start at payment 1 with the bracket, go to 60, and then close your bracket and press enter. I'm just going to type that in 1, comma 60, close my bracket and press enter. So I get, I'll just squeeze this in here. For the last one, I get $32,944.98. So that's how much interest you have paid in those 5 years. So about $33,000 of interest in those 5 years. And for any loans, the initial first 5 years is like the most time or the highest amount of interest you're paying because your loan's at the very like peak of how much it is, right? So it seems like a lot of interest. And for mortgages, yeah, I think you guys have probably noticed you do pay a lot of interest for mortgages just because you're borrowing so much. Okay, so sorry that's kind of messy, but these are just some new keys that you can use to help you instead of doing like the slow, long calculations for some different things. Okay, so let's look at the next example. So Mary and Kyle are buying furniture. The furniture is $1,075. They can make monthly payments of $75. They have 2 options. Which one should they choose? So for furniture store has a credit card. It offers a $100 rebate off the purchase price. So if we're borrowing for our PV, if we're borrowing $1,075, we get to deduct $100 off of that for the rebate. The interest is pretty high, 18.7. It's compounded daily. Looks like they can afford monthly payments of $75. So it's going to be a negative 75 because they're giving that money to the bank. They want to pay off the loan. We don't know how long that's going to take them, so that's why we're solving for N. Okay. And then likewise for the bank credit card, so they have another option of using a credit card instead. So it's got a little bit of a lower interest rate, so they may want to consider that. The key is, though, that this one's a little bit of a trick question. It says there's no interest for the first year. So that first year of making payments, they have no interest on it. So we're not going to use the solver for the first year. We're going to use the solver for after that first year is up. So what we have to do is figure out, well, how much are they actually borrowing with interest? So out of the 1,075, we need to subtract off that first year of payments. So that would be 12 payments in the first year, and each payment would be $75. So that would be our first move. So taking the loan, but taking off that first year of the $75 payments. So after that whole first year of $75 payments, it looks like they only owe $175 after that. So that's 1 year of payments. So they're only going to be borrowing that $175 under the interest category. So you still need to keep paying it off. They're doing $75 payments. Don't forget your negative for your 75. And we're doing monthly payments. So it's obviously not going to take them very long, like 2.5 months of payments this way, because they've already done a year of payments for that option, right? So in the end, we want to know, like worst case scenario, what was to compare these, which option should they choose? So I'm thinking what will work best is to use the interest key for each one of these at the end, just to know how much total interest they actually paid. Okay, so calculating the N for the first one, I'm going to put this all into my solver. I don't know what N is. My interest is 18.7. I'm borrowing the 1,075 minus the $100 rebate. My payments are $75. I want to pay down my loan to 0. I'm doing monthly payments and compounding daily. So it looks like with this option, I'm going to have 15 payments. So N is 14.654. So while I've got that in my calculator, I'm going to do this part here. So I'm going to go from payment 1 to that final payment. So that final payment is a partial payment, but I want to include it. So I'm going to go to 15 to see what the total sum of my interest is. So remember, you have to go second quit out of your window first. Then you go into your apps under finance. You scroll down to interest, and then you're going to put 1,15 because you have to do that whole final payment. Even though it's not a full $75, it's going to be still a payment. So this way I'm looking at getting $124.20 of interest. Okay, so not bad. Let's check option 2 for our interest, how much interest we're having to pay. So for option 2, I'm going to put all this into my solver. So I don't know my N. My interest is 15.4, 175 for what I'm borrowing. I've got $75 of a payment and monthly payments and the $375. Okay, so this is going to give me 2.38 payments. So 3 total payments, but the last one's going to be a partial one. So we're going from payment 1 to 3. So remember to go second quit, apps, and then finance, and then scroll all the way down to the interest one. So we're going from 1 to 3. Don't forget to close, and then calculate. So it looks like this option we're doing $3.95 in interest. So that looks obviously really low because the whole first year you don't have interest in it. What you also need to take into account is with this first one, you also save that $100. So that really should be deducted off of your interest because the whole cost of the item was $100 less as well. So if you deduct that $100 off, option A still has $24 of interest compared to $395. So your answer of which option should you choose? I would say I would choose option B because you're paying less interest. So it never said anywhere that you needed to use the interest key or that that was the route you needed to take. Basically with these questions now, you just have to think about how can I show which is a better option. So you can use the interest key if you want. You can calculate the total paid, that would work too. So lots of options for solving now. Okay, so next example, I know this is really long today, so you might want to do this over a couple of days. Ed wants to buy a car and needs to use credit to finance it. The cost with taxes and shipping is $24,738. Ed's decided he's going to repay the loan in 4 years, so car loans are repaid way faster than house loans because the amount isn't as much. He's going to use monthly payments and he has two options. So one is he's secured a line of credit. The interest rate on that is 1.7%, and that's above the Bank of Canada rate, which is currently the 0.5%. So we'll have to add those together to get that total. Or the dealership has offered some financing at 2.5%, and that's compounded daily. So which option should he choose? So we need some proof of why we think that's a better option. Okay, so looking at this, he's repaying with monthly payments. So our PY is going to be 12. We don't know what that payment is, so that's going to be what we're solving for here. So sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out what you're solving for. So it may be best just to put in all your numbers first and see what category you're kind of missing a number for. So there's the cost of his loan. We want to pay down that loan to 0. He's borrowing that amount, so it's positive. For our interest, the line of credit is out of a 1.7, but that's on top of the Bank of Canada, so we'd have to add that 0.5 to it. We're told he's going to pay it back in 4 years of monthly payments, so N would end up being 48. And then our CY is compounded monthly. So for this option, going into our solver, so 4 times 12, 1.7 plus 0.5. We're borrowing $24,738. We're doing monthly payments and monthly compounding. So we're trying to figure out what our payment is. So it looks like our payment is going to be $538.86. So that's if he uses the line of credit. Alternatively, he can borrow money from the dealership. Sometimes the dealerships have really good low interest rates. They're trying to encourage you to buy from them. Sometimes they even have free financing for like a year or two. Just always watch what happens after that. You might be locked in. You want to make sure that you're weighing your options, because paying the least amount of interest is best case scenario for you. So this way he's still doing monthly payments. He's borrowing the same amount of money, so the $24,738, and he's still doing the monthly payments for the 4 years. So what's changed is the interest rate and the compounding. So just make sure you go in and change those two. So the interest rate is a little bit higher, and we compound now more often, which means he's going to be paying more interest. So it looks like this way his loan is going to be $542 a month and 14 cents. So which option should he choose? So seeing as though he's basically paying these the same, like the payments are the same, he's doing 48 payments for each, it's pretty easy to see which loan option would be better. If he was doing a different amount of payments, then you'd need to calculate total paid. But here we can basically see 48 payments of $538 versus 48 payments of $542. It's going to be this option, the lower payment option for him that he should choose. So the payment is lower because of one, the interest rate being lower, and 2, because of the compounding frequency of the interest being lower as well. So I would suggest he chooses option 1. Okay, last example. Nikki wants to be debt-free in 5 years. She is currently running 2 credit cards. She makes monthly payments on those credit cards. Remember, my encouragement is never carry a balance on your credit card. The interest rate is so high and it's next to impossible to pay it off if you're carrying balances, just because each month it keeps calculating so much interest. So for Nikki, she instead of using the loans on the credit cards, she can take those credit card loans and pay them off with a line of credit from her bank instead, which would be an option I would definitely encourage looking at. That line of credit has about half as much of an interest rate, and she's got a $6,000 credit. So she plans to pay off both her credit card balances by borrowing money from the line of credit. How much interest is she going to save in total? So basically what we need to do is calculate how much she's going to have to pay if she kept card A, how much she's going to have to pay if she kept card B, and then now that she's planning to get this line of credit, how much would she have to pay? And then the difference between these two added together, between those two and then this one, will be that amount of interest she saves, because it's going to be way cheaper to do this one. So if you want, you could pause the video, fill in the variables for each of these options and see if you can figure it on your own, and I'm going to work through it right now. Okay, so looking at card A, the balance on card A is 243698. The interest rate is 18.5, compounded daily. So she's trying to make monthly payments, so her PY is going to be 12. She's paying off this, and she wants to be debt-free in 5 years. So that's 5 years of monthly payments. We don't know what the payment is, so that's what we're going to be solving for. Same for card B. Her balance is 304326. Interest rate is 19, compounded daily. So for this one, she's making monthly payments as well. We don't know the payments. We're going to calculate that. Her future value is 0 because she's paying off the loan, and this is also going to be the 5 years of debt-free. So what I'm going to do is, because I want to compare interest in the end, I'm going to use the sum interest button once I get all this information in to see after the 5 years how much interest has she paid for this one. And then I'm going to do the same thing once I retype for this question. How much interest will she have paid in the 5 years for this one? Okay, and then in the end, I'll do it for this last one here to see how much interest when they're both combined. And then that's a good way to compare. So I can use that sum interest button to help me with that. Okay, so I'm just going to pause the video, go in and calculate the payments and the interests for everything. I can quickly fill in this one too. So the interest rate is 9.6. She's doing the 5 years for this loan. So this loan would be just paying off both the credit cards and then with this loan. So to get the PV, how much she's going to borrow, we would need to add the 2 credit card costs together. It's about $5,000 she's borrowing, because that's what she's going to be paying off her loans for. So once again, we need payment for this, and we're going to be paying it down there. So our PY is going to be 12 for monthly payments. And then this one is compounded monthly, so the CY would be 12 as well. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to pause the video, use my calculator to calculate all this, and then come back to do the final answer. Okay, so I filled in the value. The payment for the first one was about $62. In total, was about $1,300 of interest. The payment for the second one was $79, about $1,700 of interest. And then the payment for the line of credit, so because all the payments were combined together then, that one was a bit more for the payment, but that's because the 2 loans were together, so $115. And then the total interest was $1,400 there, just because we've got, remember, the half the interest rate, and the compounding is way less frequent. So to figure out how much interest she's saving, I'm going to take the 2 individual credit cards, add those two together. So that's going to give me the amount of those two separate credit cards, so keeping that. And then I'm going to subtract off the interest she would have had to pay for the line of credit. So looking at 1327 plus 1708.07, and then taking off the 1441 and 55 cents. So it looks like in total she saves $1,500 approximately interest wise. So way in her best interest not to carry those balances on her credit cards and instead to use that line of credit. So that would definitely be financial advice that you could give to someone from this. So some of you may be choosing to go into a financial course, like something at Red River or something at university after this, or college, and you will be learning more about different loans and calculations and things like that, and you may become someone who eventually will offer financial advice to people. Okay, so that's it for today.